Do you have your bags? Your reservation number? May I have your name? Thank you for checking in to the Bourbon Orleans Hotel. I'm your host, Ryan Mckern, and journey with me on an episode of the Wicked Webs We Weave podcast as we discover the history of the Bourbon Orleans Hotel, a French opera at the Orleans Theater, and the many ghosts and haunts that roam these walls. Sit back and dwell in the proverbial darkness, my friends. And welcome to the Wicked Webs We Weave. Nothing could reflect the rich history of the Bourbon Orleans Hotel more appropriately than its placement in the French Quarter, between heaven and hell, except for the ghosts who still walk the corridors of the hotel and beyond. In its earliest incarnation, the Bourbon Orleans was not a hotel at all, but a theater, although plans for the Theater de Orleans were drawn up initially in 1806. The War of 1812 put a damper on its construction, and the structure was not finished until 1815. Architecturally built in the French Provençal style, the theater was said to rival even the most ornate opera houses in Europe. Fate dealt an unforgiving hand, however. The 1 year later, the Theater de Orleans met its end in a round of arson and fire. Entrepreneur and Saint-Domingue refugee John Davis rebuilt the theater, and no sooner had it opened did the theater become an international hit and the first of its kind in the United States. In the first 5 years of its debut, 140 operas were performed at the theater. In the winter months, Davis operated out of New Orleans during the hot, scorching summers when yellow fever scoured the city and number of dead laid in the thousands. His theater company toured the United States within the border of the Crescent City, though a rival opera house popped up on Camp Street. At one point, both theaters were put on the same opera within a 2-month span of each other. The competitions ended in 1847 when the Camp Street Theater was destroyed by fire. In the Orleans Ballroom, Davis was not content with just the success of the Theater de Orleans. Soon after its opening, he constructed the Salle de Orleans, also known as the Orleans Ballroom. Directly next door, the ballroom was destined to be the hotspot for Creole society in New Orleans. Women danced, their eyes shining brightly, though it's uncertain if the twinkle was due to their joy or the poisonous effect of the belladonna as they elegantly twirled around the ballroom like graceful apparitions barely skimming the floor, though their swishing gowns were a dead ringer to their mortality. Stately gentlemen pondered the women from afar before making their move, offering a hand to the lady to dance or speaking to matchmaking mamas, whom were looking to make the best match for their daughters. Those who were lucky at love found themselves downstairs in the gambling rooms, all around. The Salle de Orleans gleamed with the promise of good fortune and wealth. It was a place for masquerade balls, carnival fêtes, and military parades. This is the former ballroom in the Bourbon Orleans Hotel. Today it is used for weddings and more. It is said the ghosts of women are often seen dancing here. The former ballroom of Bourbon's Orleans Hotel is used for weddings. And you may see the ghost dancing above. but the Orleans Ballroom is probably best known for hosting the infamous quadrille balls of the 19th century. After the Louisiana Purchase of 1803, cultural life in New Orleans became muddled. Cross-racial relations, which had once been the norm, took a new turn. Historically, the term quadroon referred to the women in this region who were one-fourth African. They were considered to be the most beautiful and exotic of all women in New Orleans. And in 1781, one New Orleans governor even tried to tame their exotic myths by mandating that their hair must always be wrapped up in a taillon or handkerchief. But the chignon did not little have stifle effect in the desire of the wealthy French Creole men, and so the quadrille balls were created. For better or worse, the balls in Salle d'Orleans functioned as a meeting place where matchmaking mamas deliberated on the best options for their daughters, and the Creole men followed their hearts, if not their passions. The system termed placage. Women who were chosen when set up as castellans and courtesans in the historical neighborhoods of the Treme. They were gifted a house, money, jewels. Any daughters that birthed were placed back into the placage system, and any sons in the educated of France. Duels, too, were commonplace. Creole men were a hot-tempered bunch, and although no weapons were generally allowed within the Salle d'Orleans, if two men fought over a woman, it was necessary to take it outside, marching over to St. Anthony's Garden. Tucked behind the cathedral, the men brandished their swords and fought until one man crumpled in defeat. The uninjured party would dust himself off, probably utter a scathing insult, before turning back to the ballroom to continue his courtship with the lady of his choice. St. Anthony's Garden was at one time a cemetery as well. Between death by disease, natural causes, and duels, one can only imagine how many ghosts still haunt that cemetery and plot of land. The Civil War and Depression of Bourbon streets and nightlife ultimately ruined the high success of the Theatre d'Orleans and Salle d'Orleans. In its next incarnation, though, the Bourbon Orleans Hotel would become much more like the Demore and confident Royal Street. In 1881, the Sisters of the Holy Family, the first African-American convent, moved into the space of the old Salle d'Orleans. The ballroom became their chapel. Over the door, the words, "Silence, my soul. God is here," were inscribed. In a way, the nuns purchased the Salle d'Orleans as a way to strip the building of its sordid and unforgiving past by instilling the morally righteous there instead. Only in New Orleans can a place of vice and mystery be exchanged for a venue of virtue and religion. One can only imagine if the ghosts are just as confused as those who remoaned. The property functioned as a sisterhood's cloister, an orphanage, as well as the first Catholic school for African-American girls in New Orleans. In the 1960s, however, the nuns had outgrown their home and expansion was necessary. The academy had over 1,300 students and 400 nuns within its walls on an everyday basis. Ultimately, they sold the property to Bourbon Kings Hotel Corporation, who wished to restore the crumbling building. Today, the Bourbon Orleans Hotel has been restored to its former glory, and it's no surprise that the ballroom is the hotel's most stunning feature, with 218 guest rooms, some of which actually overlook Bourbon Street and Orleans Avenue. There is no doubt that the Bourbon Orleans Hotel has something more to offer for everyone. The amenities include our heated outdoor salt water pool in the interior courtyard, free Wi-Fi, complimentary cocktails at the bar, and the Bourbon fitness center, and many more. such a rich history, Bourbon, Orleans is a destination place for weddings and other large-scale events. The Bourbon Orleans Hotel is reportedly so haunted that the hotel and its employees have simply embraced the dead. Spending the night at the Bourbon Orleans is more than just a luxurious stay in the French Quarter. It's also a chance to get close and personal with the unliving. With such as mysterious history, it's hard to say exactly who you might run into during the course of your stay. Guests and employees have reported 4 main apparitions who grace the halls of the Bourbon Orleans. The ghost children of the hotel. When yellow fever swept through the city during the late 19th century, the nuns of the Sisters of the Holy Family prayed and cared for the sick orphans in their care. But the disease was deadly, devastating, and many of the children never lived to outlast the sickness that tore at their bodies. It seems that some of those children were never left the site where they were last cared for by the nuns inside the Bourbon Orleans. The haunting sounds of lifting children's laughter echo in the hallways of the hotel. Guests of the hotel have experienced the back of their shirts being yanked, only to turn around and find the hallways completely empty. But hearing the sounds of children playing is not nearly as unnerving as hearing the tortured cries that emanate from room 644. Allegedly the most haunted room in the entire hotel. For nearly a century, rumors have circulated that a nun of the Sisters of the Holy Family committed suicide in that particular room of 644. The nuns have never confirmed nor denied these statements, and perhaps the lack of denial is confirmation of its own. You be the judge. The anguished cries from room 644 certainly suggest that someone, whether a nun or not, did take their life there. Multiple guests have reported climbing in bed after a long day out, only to be woken in the midst of night, seeing objects and apparitions and silhouettes in the dark, finally resting on the ghost of a woman dressed in a habit standing right next to the bed. And although guests no doubt opens their mouth to scream bloody, the nun only watches with rapt attention. This is perhaps the ghost of an unfortunate someone who lost their lives. A Confederate soldier has been spotted limping down the hallways. His uniform is always tattered, bloody, as though he has already tasted the horrors of battle and did not emerge as a victor. As you burrow under the covers of your bed, the sounds of his hollow and uneven footsteps linger in the dead of night, just as the scraping of his sword scratches against the flooring. Perhaps the wounded soldier is just seeking peace, and it believes to be no harm whatsoever when staying at the Bourbon Orleans Hotel. But if you get the chance, stop in the former Salle d'Orleans, the hotel's pride and joy. Under the crystal chandeliers, you may even witness an apparition of a woman still dancing, the hem of her gown dusting the floor as she dances with an imaginary partner. Stranger things that have happened allegedly occurred at the Orleans Ballroom. It is said that a bloodstain appears quite often on the carpet floors. Staff will spot it, heaving as a sigh as they do, and proceed to scrub the stain away. They clean it, but knowing that it will reappear shortly after. The stain is not a result of a clumsy guess, but of a deadly duel over a century ago. No doubt 2 fabulously wealthy Creole men fell for the same women and decided to duke it out right in the midst of the party itself. Though we have no record, no way of knowing If it was one of the men that died that night, blood still has been spilled, and it's been spilling for a century, over and over. I highly recommend that everyone see the Bourbon Orleans Hotel. It is a beautiful place, and the ghost will not harm. It is, again, another beautiful place in the historic French Quarter. I would like to thank GhostCityTours.com, NewOrleans.com, FrenchQuarterPhantoms.com, HauntedHistory.com, and research for this episode. That will do it for this evening, my friends. I hope you were able to warm yourself under the fire of the ghosts this evening. Please like and subscribe and share this video, and leave a comment of what you'd like to hear me cover next time on this podcast. Once again, I am your host, Ryan Mckern. Thank you all so much for listening and watching the video. It truly means a lot to me. And until we meet again, au revoir.